From the 1011 Now streaming studio in Lincoln, Nebraska, this is the REPORT Husker Show, sponsored by Fat Dog's Convenience Store.
Hi, everyone. Bill Rentschler in the 1011 Now streaming studio, coming to you after Nebraska falls in overtime to Illinois, bringing you live coverage with sports director Kevin Suits, who right now is live in Memorial Stadium. Kevin, I'll kind of give you the stage here as Nebraska falls to Illinois in overtime, kind of a whimper as the game came to an end.
Yeah, I think everybody here at Memorial Stadium celebrating the program's 400th consecutive sellout really thought Nebraska was going to win this game. It was tied 24-24 late in regulation. Nebraska had the football and was driving. And on third down, Luke Lingenfelter got behind the Illinois defense. Dylan Raiola had a wide open tight end to hit, but he threw it a little bit off his back foot. They weren't able to connect, and that brought John Hull onto the field, Nebraska's backup place kicker. He had an attempt to give the Huskers the lead with about 3 minutes to go, but Hull's kick was not good, and it gave Illinois the ball. Illinois was able to get across midfield, but essentially from that point on, it was destined for overtime. And Bill, if we could spend the next 20 minutes talking about what happened in overtime, but let's wrap it up quickly like this. Illinois scored in 2 plays. When it was Nebraska's turn with the football in overtime, it started with a false start and a sack. And when the Huskers got behind the chains, it was a tough road for Nebraska to try to tie this game up, if not go for 2 in the win. So instead, Nebraska is stunned here at home, 31-24. It's Nebraska's first loss of the season, and the first loss with Dylan Raiola as Nebraska's quarterback. A lot of folks knew going into this game, Bill, it was going to be a close one. It would go down to the wire, and so many were wondering how would Dylan operate in crunch time. There was some good, but I think we saw a little bit of his confidence shaken in those crunch time moments. Specifically, he fumbled the football in the fourth quarter, Bill, twice. Nebraska didn't lose the ball either time, and then when overtime happened and Nebraska got backed up, man, not only Dylan's confidence, I think, was shaken, it seemed like the entire offense, they weren't so sure that they were going to be able to get the first down and then ultimately score.
And Kevin, now we have Chase Madison here on the desk with you as well. Again, I'll bring up, and you kind of mentioned it, the Huskers have been putting out the Chasing 3 series. And again, tonight was kind of a perfect encapsulation of that. They did not get it done. Just an incredibly disappointing loss in front of a charged Memorial Stadium for the 400th sellout.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of folks, Bill, that are going to probably point to the officiating in this game. And let's be honest, it was not good. Whatever the opposite of being homered is, that happened tonight. Illinois tended to get a lot of the crucial calls. And a lot of folks are probably going to talk to what would have been a late hit on Illinois, but it was not called in overtime. It's when Nebraska was backed up on third down. Jamal Banks was hit out of bounds right in front of the Nebraska sideline. Matt Rule pleaded with the side judge, but did not get the flag. And that was kind of a summation of the night. Nebraska appeared to have a touchdown in the first half on an Isaiah Nayer reception in the end zone. It was ruled an interception. And on Nebraska's opening drive of the game, you talk about an omen, we didn't know it at the time. Nebraska had a situation where it looked like Illinois was draped all over the Nebraska wide receiver. It would have been an automatic first down for the Huskers. The flag was never thrown, and instead the Huskers came up empty on that opening drive. Yeah,
again, Raiola, again, he played fairly well. He had over 250 yards passing. It seemed like the ground game kind of got going there late, but then, when it really mattered, it was kind of the same old story when it comes to the overtime Huskers. I'm not sure, Chase, when the last time Nebraska won a game in overtime. Feels like it's been a really, really long time, though.
Yeah, you could tell that they struggled last year in overtime during the regular season. Just a hard-fought battle. I couldn't hear Kevin earlier. I don't know the beginning of your conversation, but just it felt like close games slip away. And for Matt Rule as a head coach, I'm not saying this is on Matt Rule, but he has struggled against top 25 opponents. His last win against a top 25 team was back in 2016 with Temple. He never beat a top 25 team when he was at Baylor. So just mistakes down the stretch, a missed field goal in the fourth quarter that could have put the game away, and it just felt like costly penalties and mistakes that weren't hurting the Huskers in the first 3 weeks that came out tonight and ultimately decided the game.
Yeah, Kevin, you could really tell this was Big Ten football. It was tough sledding in the trenches, and the Illinois offensive line I thought was pretty impressive throughout the game. Even when the Huskers were hitting them at the line of scrimmage, they were falling forward, and they were still getting a couple yards.
Yeah, Illinois moves to 4-0 on the season. They will definitely jump up in the polls. Nebraska will likely fall out. But I think this Illinois team is a lot better than a lot of folks here in Nebraska gave them credit for. Luke Altmaier, pretty slippery, got out of the pocket and kept drives going. And Illinois really committed to the ground game late in the game. They were trying to wear Nebraska out. They tied the game up in the fourth quarter on a play-action pass to a defensive lineman wearing jersey number 94 without a last name on it. For those that are a little bit familiar with Illinois football, that's not surprising. Goes back to a situation the Fighting Illini had against Wisconsin a season ago. But they'll do that. They'll change their personnel. They'll put big guys on the edge of the line, make them eligible receivers. And that was a pretty good play call by Illinois. That's how they tied the game. And then they had a lot of confidence when they got the ball first in overtime that they were going to score. The opening play of overtime, it was a 20-plus yard run by the Fighting Illini, and it set up the score for Illinois. Fighting Illini win at 31-24. Nebraska drops to 3-1 on the season. Matt Rule addressing his team right now. He will meet with reporters shortly. We're going to have that on 1011now.com this evening. Looking at some of the numbers, Bill, you talk about Big Ten football. Dante Dowdell rushes 20 times. That's a new career high at Nebraska for 72 yards. The Huskers did not have a rushing score in the game. Isaiah Nair, he was the big guy on the receiving end for Nebraska and doing a lot of the scoring. Nair finishes with 4 catches for 90 yards, and he had a pair of touchdowns.
Yeah, Kevin, I think, obviously we're trying to figure out, I think Rule's going to be at the podium here in just a moment. But Chase, just kind of, I guess, final thoughts here as we kind of digest a really surprising loss. Huskers were touchdown favorites in this game and came in and kind of punched Nebraska in the mouth a little bit.
Yeah, well, looking at the way they played on the field, I thought there was a lot of stakes with the whole 400 sellouts and just all of the antics behind this week. And unlike Colorado, they didn't show up in the big moment, right? There were some great plays by the offense, but the defense looked at times out of character against the talented Illinois team. And I think Illinois was just kind of playing with their hair on fire, a team that really you haven't seen a team come into Memorial Stadium and kind of block out the noise. It felt like Luke Altmaier had earplugs in for most of this game as he was just poised and controlled throughout the game and really got after Nebraska. And when Nebraska was on their heels and it felt like Illinois was coming and taking their lunch money, Nebraska struggled. And penalties, small miscues down the stretch, and just the inability to convert on offense on some big plays really is costly in this game. And it kind of feels like remnants of last season where Nebraska does a lot well, but then they continue to make mistakes to hurt themselves. Now, granted, it wasn't a bountiful amount of turnovers, but this was another game where it had a chip shot, an arguably decently easy field goal that's makeable, and then injuries on the offensive line, and then you have penalties with the people that come in to replace the starters, and just almost inexcusable. But the way that Illinois came out and the confidence they played with, it doesn't surprise me they're walking away from Lincoln tonight with the win.
Yeah, Kevin, again, final thoughts now. I mean, Nebraska, it was a short week, but now they get an extra day. They go on the road for the first time now against a Purdue team next week. Kind of going to find out a lot about this team after a loss tonight.
My final thought is this, Bill. I think Nebraska's a good football team. They played really well tonight, but they didn't play well in crunch time. There were a few too many penalties. But overall, we'll find out what this team is made of. They now have to go on the road for the first time this season. And what I said about Nebraska, I think specifically applies to Dylan Raiola. Let's keep in mind, he is a freshman quarterback. And if you take out the final few minutes of regulation in which Nebraska had the football in overtime, he played very, very well. Dylan finishes 24 of 35 for 297 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. That's pretty good. That is a quarterback rating of 162. And again, he's a freshman going up against a nationally ranked defense that feasts on taking the football away. He did have a turnover, fumbled the ball, he had an interception, and he fumbled the ball, interception, sure. It might not have been an interception, it might have been a touchdown, by the way. And then he fumbled the ball a few times. Dylan probably wishes he had the throw back over the middle to Lingenfelter, and Dylan probably wishes that overtime would have gone a lot differently. Sometimes those are just called growing pains, and Nebraska will experience them. They're not numb to them, but this is still a team that can have a very successful season. They're going to have to regroup and try to find a way to win on the road.
All right, Kevin, I appreciate you again right now. Again, Kevin Suits live down at Memorial Stadium. We appreciate you jumping on here real quick. We'll go ahead and let you go again. I know you got to get down to press conferences and do a whole bunch of other stuff as we wrap up coverage. So, Kevin, appreciate your time. All right, so Chase, tough one. 400 sellout. Again, everyone wanted a win for the 400th sellout, but just not meant to be tonight.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, and just overall, just a tough game for Nebraska, and I think Kevin really described it well. Growing pains, and this season has a mountain of expectations, but it's not going to be perfect. And I think that's something that fans just have a tough pill maybe to swallow. But there's a lot to look forward to still for the rest of the season.
All right. And, again, we'll have more coverage, again, of tonight, on our digital platforms coming up throughout the night. And, again, Chase will obviously have recap of everything tomorrow in the end report at 6 and 10. I think it's actually 6:30 tomorrow.
Yep.
6:30 and 10 tomorrow. So appreciate everyone for tuning in and for watching. So this is live extended coverage of Nebraska's loss to Illinois in overtime. Again, keep it tuned to 10/11, both on air and online, for all of your coverage. Until next time, folks, have a nice night.
You've been listening to the Report Husker Show, sponsored by Fat Dog's Convenience Store. Watch, listen, and stream on the 1011 Now app, on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more Husker coverage throughout the week, watch the Report on 1011 Sports at 6 and 10 p.m. and download the 1011 Now app.